Good evening, Pioneers. Thank you for joining us today for Panel with the President. My name is Elizabeth Vigu, and I'm the Secretary of the Student Government Association here at Marietta College. I'm happy to be hosting Panel with the President, our annual event that allows students an opportunity to ask questions directly to faculty and staff of the college. If you have any questions at any time during this event, please include it in the comments section, and we will answer it now, or someone will get in touch with you as soon as possible. We have joining us today Dr. Danford, the Vice President for Student Life, Dr. Bland, Provost and Head of the Faculty, Michelle Mara, Senior Vice President of Finance, Larry Heiser, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Sergeant Daly, Campus Police Officer, Betsy Knott, Director of the Career Center, Tony Mail, Assistant Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Adria Hanley, the Parkhurst General Manager, and President Root, the 19th President of Marietta College. As a reminder, if you have any questions at all during our event, please leave them in the comments section, and we will do our best to answer them in a timely manner. Our first question today is for President Root. The question is, will all students eventually be required to get the vaccine? What will the rules be for vaccinated individuals next semester? President Root.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, everybody that has come to assist us. So know that we'll answer all your questions. I want to take a little bit of time first before I answer the question to thank all the students at Marietta College. You've been absolutely awesome. This semester and last semester, there's an awful lot of folks out there that can't say that we were in person for the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021. You can say that you were. I realize it was a little crazy. It was a little different, but you should be very, very proud of your success over the last 2 semesters. Thank you. Thank you for all that you've done. Now, questions about the vaccine. Right now, the vaccine is under emergency use authorization, which means it's temporary and voluntary. So we are not right now allowed to make it mandatory. What we do want to do is strongly, and I underline strongly encourage all students to get vaccinated. There's a vaccine clinic on campus tomorrow. Tom Perry is going to be sending out an ability to sign up for that vaccination clinic. Our shots are Johnson & Johnson, which are the 1 shot only. So I really strongly encourage you to do that. As for the second part of Elizabeth's question, what will be the requirements for vaccines in the fall? Again, I think that it will go rapidly over the next 3 or 4 months in terms of new decisions, new guidelines from both the CDC and the governor of the state of Idaho, new guidelines from our health department about what we may and may not do relative to vaccines. If we do go down the road of a vaccine for everybody on Marietta College, know that there will be an exemption for religious purposes, and there will likely be exemptions for health and medical purposes. So we will keep in touch with you. Stay tuned. The information will be put out there so that you will know what the requirements are, and likely we will have vaccine clinics before the end of the semester, and we will also likely, as we come back to school in August, also have the ability to have vaccinations on campus or with our local partners when you come back to school. Richard?
Now a couple questions for Dr. Danford. Are there plans or a timeline to fill the position for Director of Diversity and Inclusion?
That's a great question, and I will let everyone know that every single member of Cabinet, when we have a vacancy in our areas of operation, are asked to take our time and carefully examine what the needs are for that position, for refilling it automatically, or whether a new configuration may be needed or a different type of staffing may be necessary. And so that's what we're doing right now in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Tony Mail, who's with us this evening, is serving as acting director, and we are working on bringing back a part-time internship position in that office, and then waiting for reports from the Fifth Street Consulting Group, who've been working since late in the fall semester on doing an assessment for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to receive their feedback in the last week of April. and taking all that information into consideration before moving forward with any definitive plans on staffing in that area.
Okay, the next question for you, Dr. Danford, is a question that was submitted by a student. And the question is, what is the logic in not rehiring so many RAs who previously held the position? Wouldn't keeping people who have experience in the position create a more cohesive team?
I was not directly involved in the RA hiring process, but my understanding from conversations that I've had with staff in the Office of Community Living about hiring decisions had to do with performance in the role over the course of the year, as well as performance in the application and the interview process. It is a highly competitive process, and while yes, there is value in bringing in people from year to year who have that background experience, there's also value in bringing in new faces and new experiences to the team. So finding that right balance to meet the needs of the campus community are always first and foremost in those hiring decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Danford.
Thank you.
Now we'll welcome up Dr. Bland to answer some registration questions. The question is, are current class registration sizes based on COVID guidelines and spacing requirements? Will the class caps be bumped if COVID rules change?
The first half of that is yes. We have maintained our COVID caps because we're really looking at worst case scenario is we have to keep being so far apart. But yes, if we've got more flexibility, we will be adjusting those. So absolutely. We want to be ready and not have to go back and fix it. It's a lot easier for us to relax and expand. We don't want to be in a position where we say, yeah, you registered for this class, but now there's not room for you.
Okay, and one more question for you, Dr. Bland, right now. There are a good number of faculty positions open across departments. What are the plans to fill these roles?
Every single department that had an open position that came forward and asked is having that position filled. So right now we have folks who are doing tenure line search now. We have departments where they have strategically decided they're going to get a one-year person and then start their search in the fall. We have multiple people who I have already, primarily for these one-year positions, and they're also eligible to be able to apply in many cases for the tenure line. We've hired some familiar faces. So we've hired folks who already have perhaps taught here or have a connection to the college. So we feel very fortunate that the short-term solutions we're doing will help. For those of you who aren't familiar with an academic search, they're really tied to the academic year. So folks start thinking about their job searches in academics, faculty members, starting in the fall, not at this moment. So it gives us a much better choice. But all the departments where we took a pause because of the unknown of COVID, and we're being very careful with our budget to make sure we're responsible for ourselves and responsible for you all, we've been able to meet those needs.
Thank you, Dr. Bland. Next, we will welcome up Tony Mail, the Acting Director of Diversity and Inclusion. While the position of director is unfilled, what is your vision for making progress in fulfilling the functions of the office?
I think we're going to continue on the path that the previous director laid for us, and we'll await the results from the Fifth Street project or consulting firm and see what direction we need to go in the future.
Could you explain the Fifth Street Consulting's role and involvement with D&I and maybe some more about the plans for the Multicultural Center?
Fifth Street Consulting is doing several things. Hopefully all of you took the survey that was given out, not just students, but employees. So they're looking at not just need within the office, they're looking at programming suggestions and participation in programs here on campus. They're looking at the possibility of us making some changes in the Multicultural Center. Hopefully some of you will be able to go see soon, but we have one of our students doing a mural for us, and I guess I kind of let the cat out of the bag. But they're doing a lot of fascinating things for us in the Multicultural Center. We're also looking at possibly a name change for the area, and as well as reconfiguring of maybe some furniture and painting and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of exciting things going on with the Multicultural Center and also with our office as well.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome up Sergeant Daly to answer a couple of campus safety questions. Sergeant Daly, students were wondering what is the process for getting more blue lights around campus in areas that students think that they are needed?
Oh, that's a good question. We do a survey every year. Actually, monthly, we do a light survey and identify problems in and around campus where we can make improvements for lighting. The blue line, I think you're talking about the call box, blue line call boxes. Yes, we are looking at adding some over by the tennis courts, over by the softball field, that direction, and freshman parking area, as well as other places on campus. Something we'll be looking more seriously into once summer gets here.
Okay, I have two more questions for
Okay.
you right now. Would it be possible to have scanners on more doors to residence halls, or what is the reason that that might not be possible right now?
That's an ongoing kind of thing too. We look at constantly and see if we can add and improve. Of course, I think cost is one of those issues too. But our end goal is to have scanners on every door of every building we have to make it easier for access and easier for us to track.
And could you point out some campus parking locations that students can use that are not currently being fully utilized?
Oh yeah, Don Drum, the Don Drum Stadium, and then the lot adjacent to that, across from First Quality Auto on 4th Street, which was donated to us 2 or 3 years ago. That one is too. It's a little farther off campus than most would like, but I also would like to remind everyone we're a phone call away. We're more than happy to come pick you up, escort you if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're not feeling safe walking that distance or any distance. We do it all the time. We're happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to remind students, if you're tuning in, to please leave any questions or concerns that you have in the comment section, and we can address them promptly. Next is Betsy Knott to answer some questions about events at the Career Center. So Betsy, could you please explain some of the events that are happening right now through the Career Center, such as the Connect 4 series and networking nights?
Sure, happy to. The Connect 4 events that are going on are happening about every other month, and those are being led by the MCAA, the Marietta College Alumni Association. And their goals with having those were to offer highlights on some of the departments that maybe didn't get as much attention through the Career Center. So those includes that lately they've done the English department, they've done the history department, and I think there's plans to do the communication department. So they're trying to find a current student, a past alumna, or alumnus, a faculty member to have conversation about how that degree has been helpful and useful to them. As it relates to the networking nights, tomorrow night, Monday, April 12th at 7:30 will be our second networking night. The first one was held last Monday, and it was for alumni and students who are either living in or interested in being in the Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Columbus areas. Tomorrow it will be alumni who are nationwide and are coming because they want to help students figure it out, find their way, get into a city, get into an industry that they are interested in. So it's a great opportunity to come and meet alumni who are there to give their time and their attention to you.
Could you explain or touch on a little bit how alumni are chosen to participate in those networking nights, and if there's a wide array of industries represented at those events?
So for the first night, Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, we chose the state of Ohio because we know that we've got so many students who are interested in staying in those larger cities. For the second night, we really aren't choosy about the alumni who are participating. So right now, I do know that there's a wide variety of alumni who are coming from industry for tomorrow night. And if you want to find out more, I guess you got to show up.
Thank you so much, Betsy.
Sure.
Next, I would like to welcome up Adria Hanley to answer some questions about campus dining. Our first question is, what new things can we expect from Parkhurst in the fall?
So I think our major goal for fall is to get as close as we can to pre-COVID service levels as possible. So we'll be closely watching the regulations coming out from the state, and working with the college to figure out how we can make that experience as robust as we possibly can for the fall.
Thank you so much, Adria. Next, I would like to welcome up Larry Heiser to answer some questions about athletics here on campus. How can students make suggestions for equipment or machines that they would like to see in the DBRC?
Okay, so new machines in the weight room, you could call Dash McNeil. Dash is my assistant in charge of facilities. I think everybody knows Dash. We do a review every year before summer gets here, and he's kind of taking out old stuff and putting on new stuff kind of in consultation with the coaches, but you certainly can participate with that. So I would say give Dash a call before the semester's over and send him an email, and we'll try to see if it's already in the plan or if we can work it in.
Thank you. Our next question for you is, will all athletes eventually be required to get the vaccine, and will there be COVID-related requirements for participating in sports next semester?
So COVID questions, I think we're in the same boat as everybody else on the requirement of a vaccine. As long as it's the emergency authorized use, it's going to be hard for us to say you have to get it or you can't play. But I would think that we would want to do as much as we can to protect ourselves and get everyone as healthy as possible before we take the field again. So we're going to continue to encourage it like the rest of the college. Can't really tell you exactly what the rules will be as it relates to COVID protocols until we have more discussions and more guidance from the CDC and the state of Ohio. Good?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Next, I would like to welcome up Michelle Mara, our Senior Vice President of Finance and Administrative Capabilities Services. Yes, that's it. I was wondering, actually this is a student submitted question. What are the plans to bolster IT capabilities on campus, such as Wi-Fi?
Well, that is a constant thing that we're working on. We understand the importance of technology. We understand how much Wi-Fi is important to everyone, and that it's strong and that it's immediate and that it's all the time, 24/7. So we're constantly working on that. I know there are plans to do more enhancements this summer. We can do a lot of that easier when students aren't on campus as far as getting all that infrastructure done. So we're in the process of doing that. We are also looking at much larger plans to do more with technology. We understand the importance of technology for the students, for the employees, for the campus, for attracting new students to our campus. So we are actually working with Advancement to work on opportunities for alumni and other donors who are interested in technology and that infrastructure to try to help bolster that, because it is a huge expense, but it's one we're whittling away at, but we obviously would like to do more, so we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you. We had a question come in from a student, and I'm not sure if you would like to answer this or pass it off to Dr. Bland, but the question is, are there any plans to remove the $1,000 penalty for each credit hour overloaded for students?
Are we talking in excess of 19 hours?
I believe the question is referencing in excess of 19, yes.
So what we do on that is we look at that on a case-by-case basis. And Dr. Bland, you might want to add in here. I can tell you from what I have seen that we've looked at that case by case. We know there are students that can handle more than 19 hours, but it is something we like to look at very carefully to make sure that you're not overdoing it. So we've had instances where we have waived that $1,000 in addition, and at one time we were at 18 hours, we raised it to 19 hours, and now we're talking about people that are wanting to take in access of that. But I'm going to let Dr. Bland take over here, because you can probably speak more to the academic piece of that than I can.
Sure. Again, old school, back when Grandma went to college, you paid per class, you paid per credit. Now most schools have this range the way we do of the definition of full-time, which stretches out kind of across the teens. So that flexibility is really there, but we do want people to be working with their advisors and with their professors and thinking about, just because I can register for 21 credits does not mean that is a good idea for me to take it necessarily. And so there does have to be a moment where we say this is beyond a full load. So it's a fee, it's not a penalty. But again, as Michelle noted, we're looking case by case. So if you're in that position, please get a hold of us.
Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome back up Michelle Mara to answer a question about financial aid. So the question is, why are students locked into their financial aid, but their charges can be increased every year?
So that's an institutional policy that we have, and I can tell you that that's consistent across, I would think, just about every institution in the country, and I know that doesn't necessarily make a difference to you, but understand that unfortunately costs of running the college do not stay stagnant, do not stay as they are right now. A year from now, we will see increases, whether it's inflation, whether it's things like COVID have happened, just costs do the increase and then increase your aid, then we haven't recognized any increase to the bottom line to help with those increased expenses. But I do want to mention a couple things to you that are very important to keep in mind. First of all, make sure you're filling out your FAFSA every year. If your situation changes from year to year, that will be noted there. Your need may change. But you also may have special circumstances, and we've just come through a whole year of, I'm sure, a whole lot of special circumstances due to COVID. When you have that situation, you need to make contact with our financial aid area and go in and have a conversation about what your special circumstances are and what steps you can take to find out if there is additional aid that can be awarded to you. The other thing I would mention, and this came up in a PIOSOR yesterday, and I didn't realize this, but Emily Shuck, our Director of Financial Aid, mentioned to the parents there that there are so many outside scholarship opportunities that are not being utilized, that are sitting there more so than ever, and I'm not sure why, other than maybe people are just hesitant to know what they're going to do in the fall. But whether you're a new student or a returning student, you can be eligible for those scholarships. So just because you're now going into your sophomore year, junior year, senior year, doesn't mean you can't apply for those outside scholarships. Make sure you do that. That gives you additional funding to go towards your bill. I wish that we could hold the line and not do increases. And when we can, we will do that. And we have done that in previous years where we could. But unfortunately, as I said, costs do change. And with that, we've got to do increases to help to offset those expenses.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Danford for some more campus living questions. So the first question is, why can't fraternities and sororities have the option to use the 5-meal plan since they have kitchens in all of their houses?
So this is a question that we get consistently and continually. And the answer has to do, in the case of sororities, who have housing directors who live in those houses with them. The housing corps of those organizations moved away from having in-house cooks many years ago, and as part of that change in the administration of those spaces, began requiring that the women living in those houses participate in the campus meal plan. And they have asked us not to move in the direction of reducing the meal plan requirements for the residents of those buildings because of the costs and the challenges associated with managing the kitchens in the house if the residents there are using those kitchens on a much larger scale. And then, of course, the same applies to the kitchens in the fraternity houses on 4th Street in the same way that they apply to kitchens in every other building on campus. So we cannot make an exception for the fraternity houses that we would not be willing to make for the buildings that have community kitchens that every single resident in those buildings could claim they could make use of rather than being on a larger than 5-meal plan per week.
Okay, I have one more question for you right now. This question was submitted by a student verbatim. There's a lot of criticism of Autism Speaks and the stigma it promotes against people with autism. Has the college considered distancing itself from doing philanthropy work for Autism Speaks because of that?
That's a great question, and I am happy to tell you that the college itself does not do philanthropy work on behalf of Autism Speaks. That happens to be the national philanthropy for the Alpha Xi Delta sorority, and the members of our local chapter have been actively engaged in conversations about how they can meet the expectations of their national organization while pulling back from philanthropic support of Autism Speaks as an organization.
Thank you, Dr. Danford.
You're welcome.
Next is Dr. Bland. The first question for you is, can professors be required to put grades in Moodle more often than just at midterms? Or could you also explain the extent to which professors are required to use Moodle currently?
Moodle is an option. It's obviously the platform we use where we want people to, they can post materials, usually your syllabi are there, but we give our faculty the freedom of pedagogy so they can approach the use of these tools differently. My essential expectation is that this is a partnership when you're talking with your faculty on your grade. You should have a syllabus that essentially shows you what percentage of your grade each assignment is worth. You should have graded assignments returned to you in a timely manner, and your faculty have office hours. If this is a faculty member who chooses to use Moodle just whole hog, you might know minute to minute exactly how your ability to say, what is my grade looking like? But before you go into that meeting, I would say, look at your syllabus and figure out if you have 4 of your 5, I'm just gonna guess, if 80% of your English class is based on essay grades, you've got 5 essays, 4 of them have been turned in and you've gotten a B+ on every single one. I'm feeling a trend towards a B+. There may be other issues of different assignments, etc., but that sort of holistic approach is also valid, and our faculty are pretty experienced in terms of seeing where grades are going. So there are many ways to engage that answer with your faculty member. And I'm sorry, what was the second one? Pass the Moodle grades.
Oh, yes. And then we have a couple questions about the schedule for fall semester. So if you could explain what fall semester is going to look like currently, and then breaks and time off for fall semester and spring semester, and maybe what the rules or regulations might be for breaks during those 2 semesters.
Sure. Right now, we are starting on the 23rd of August, and that is our first day of school. You may be in athletics, you may be doing something else, you might be an orientation leader, etc., etc. You'll have your own beginnings for the year, but that first day of school is the 23rd of August. We are not using Labor Day, and it is my goal, is Dr. Rue's goal, that we finally get to a point back. We had sort of fixed this, and then we got COVID. That Labor Day really is a time we want to be open or closed, off or on. It is the first holiday, and we don't know, again, how we'll be. So we are asking people to stay on campus, obviously, and we're going to have a school and work day on Labor Day. I know, ironically, but there you have it. We are going to have the schedule is posted through the registrar's office. We have in October a typical 2-day fall break, so 2 school days and paired with a weekend. That's perfectly normal. When we get to Thanksgiving, that usual Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off through Saturday, Sunday, just like normal. We are not finishing at that point unless we have some unforeseen circumstance. So what we have is a schedule. We know when it starts, we know when it stops, we know we're trying to give breaks. We recognize, and this is for faculty, staff, and students, we need to have these breaks. We need to have these moments where we're with our family, etc. So that's really our goal. That's our best case scenario. If we have, on one hand, I would say locally, I was just talking to our PA faculty on Wednesday or Thursday, and they said we are kind of closing down at the local hospital at Marietta Memorial, the COVID wing, because if they've only got 1 or 2 people, they can just put them in isolation rooms. We don't need a whole wing. So we're pretty good in this region. We don't know with the variants where it's going to go. I would expect to be wearing masks. I know I'm now all famous for yelling at you to wear masks, but you know we all have a purpose in life now. That's mine. But big picture, we're hoping we're not going to be in these quarantine issues. We're not going to be looking at just quite the restrictions. But we've just got to, there's a little bit of a stay tuned, but our plan now is normal breaks. I will say about spring, we haven't planned spring yet. So our goal, ideally, is that we could go back to a model that would allow us to have the day of service for MLK Day. That's sort of our entry level piece that we felt we really lost it this year. We had no safe way to do it. We can't violate the state of Ohio indoor gatherings issue. It's usually freezing cold on that day. So that is a holistic goal. So our general holistic goals for spring would be that we'll give you a start date. We will hopefully be able to use Martin Luther King Day as a day on, not a day off, in our day of service. We want to, in a standard way, be able to give you a spring break and graduate like normal people. Meaning maybe, no masks. Maybe.
Okay, I have one more question for you right now.
Okay.
We as students were kind of wondering about studying abroad. I know a lot of people are really interested in studying abroad before their time here at Marietta College is up. So do we have any insight on what that might look like yet?
There's actually a couple people who are signed up to go this summer, and we are hopeful. What we're really working on now is, as we work with a lot of partners, for those of you who have explored that with Christy Burke, and I would absolutely urge you to reach out to Christy Burke in the Office of Education Abroad to talk about your options. We use a lot of different partners. We don't, for instance, say there's only one campus you can go to in Italy, or there's only 3 choices around the world that you can go to. So a lot of what we're dependent on is whether or not these partners that are operating abroad are taking people, and what their expectations are, and what their quarantining expectations are, or vaccination expectations. So we're working with them. We're also looking at clarifying. We've actually developed a lot more protocol around this, that we have kind of an acknowledgement that if we're in a condition where the State Department, which again the State Department in the end is giving travel advisories, if it's a level 3 or level 4 warning, we're just, you can't go for credit. You can go, but usually that used to be kind of like, don't go into a war zone. Don't go into a place where there's a lot of civil unrest. And now the question is going to be, and again, we were asked this, I talked about this in our previous meeting for incoming students, and I want to clarify, we're doing at a certain rate of a pretty good success of vaccination to the most amount of people we can in the United States. There are different areas in the world that are not as successful. They may not have the infrastructure. They may be in a less developed area, but quite frankly, England is, or there's specific variants. So it does not mean you have to be going somewhere that is not a developed economy, et cetera, to be running into issues of variants and infection rates, or whether or not they allow us to come there. For a long time, remember, America wasn't exactly, we weren't the most popular people when we were having a huge amount of cases. So Christy and I talk on a regular basis about this. She also serves on our academic COVID recovery task force and is at every meeting, kind of making sure she's turning up the volume on the issue of study abroad, because we want you to be able to.
Okay, a question just came in asking, and you might have touched on this a little bit already, but if we end up having to do a semester where we go pretty much straight through like we did this semester, is there a chance that we could have more like mental health days or kind of breaks, not necessarily like multiple day breaks, but just more days off spread throughout the semester if we do have to go straight through?
If we have to go straight through, I'm going to need some mental health breaks. There's nobody in this room who isn't going to need one. Yes, we understand that the Wednesday spring break week, that was a Wednesday, was designed almost not to it was just to minimize travel. So we understand that there are needs. If we have to pivot, obviously everything will start on the 23rd. We had to commit to a start date. If we have to pivot, we'll pivot. If we have to, and nobody is cheering for this, if we have to go virtual for those last 2 weeks, because you guys remember, we stopped at Thanksgiving because we started practically on the 4th of July. So we stopped at Thanksgiving. Most of the other OAC schools, they kept going after Thanksgiving. They just made everybody go virtual. If we had to do that, we'd say, okay, go home for Thanksgiving and we will figure it out. Hopefully we'll have vaccination rates that are high enough and infection rates that are low enough that kind of travel wouldn't spark something. But we essentially canceled times where you travel because we're trying not to spread infection. But we never have a conversation about that. I can tell you at the faculty level, at the cabinet level, at any level with student life and academics, where we don't say every one of these choices, where we take a day away, we take a break away, we're trying to kind of hold down transmissions, we know that there's a mental health cost and a stress cost for every student every time. So please know that's on our front burner. So we will be open to flexibility. Best thing we can do is continue to try to be safe. And if you are able and willing, get a vaccine.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks guys. Oh, wear your mask.
Mask in hand.
Dr. Danford, there were a couple students submitted questions regarding a plan or vision for heightening concern for student mental health on campus, as that's come to the forefront of a lot of our conversations recently.
Yes, so it's a great segue from what Dr. Bland was just saying. We had the good fortune through funding from Governor DeWine's office, CARES money, to bring on some additional contract mental health support this spring. We received funding for to be able to contract an additional licensed counselor for 20 hours a week. The challenge there is that finding mental health care providers in our area to do that work is also limited because A, there are not enough licensed mental health counselors in this area, and B, those who exist are themselves experiencing high demand for their services outside of the college environment. So we're relying as heavily as we can on that contract employees, seeking additional contract employees to meet that demand. We are predicting that in the fall semester the demand is going to be even higher as we bring on new students who many cases have been entirely virtual for the last year and will be stressed as a result of not having had in-person academic experiences, feeling underprepared academically, feeling underprepared socially because they've been isolated from other individuals. So we know that demand is going to increase. So Tony and I actually just submitted an additional grant proposal for additional funding from the governor's office on Friday that will allow us to add even more mental health support. And we're examining options for not only local contractors, but also some virtual options. There we're seeing, students responded particularly well to virtual telehealth sessions, but we're also starting to hear some feedback from students at this point that there is a desire for returning to more of the in-person face-to-face counseling sessions. So it's an ongoing concern, and we're working to address it as best we can.
Next question is, what are the plans to make quarantine better for students? Because I know we had a focus group, I believe it was last semester, kind of talking about how quarantine can become a better, or I guess less scary situation for students to be in. Yeah. So I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit.
Sure. So one of the great things about this semester has been, A, we haven't had to quarantine nearly as many students, so that's been helpful. B, the new guidelines from the CDC that were issued in early December allowed us to have students who are in quarantine be able to test for COVID on day 7, and if they had remained asymptomatic during those first 7 days of quarantine and had a negative test result on day 7, to be released from quarantine after only 7 days. So those, I think, are the two biggest things. And then for those students who are in quarantine, if they're interested in having daily health walks and that sort of thing, we were able to do that with many students. Some of those who were student athletes, their coaches were reaching out and doing that for them, but we had other students who were student athletes and wanted additional time outdoors with a volunteer, or who were not student athletes and wanted that opportunity. So, and I think, I know that Adria's up next for some questions, and she can talk about how meals in quarantine, that has worked much more smoothly this semester than it did last semester, and so we're grateful to Parkhurst for their partnership on that.
Thank you, Dr. Danford.
You're welcome.
Adria, I was wondering if you could just expand on what Dr. Danford just talked about with quarantine meals, and then we have a couple other questions for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. We did take over the ordering and the delivery functions for the quarantine meals. We were preparing them for the entire academic year, but did add those pieces in. So we worked hard to develop clear communication and give students the ability to make selections, reaching out to students with special dietary considerations to make sure that their needs were being met, as well as following up with a survey to get an idea of what that quarantine meal experience looked like. So we were, as we were going into that new process, making sure we were getting feedback on that as well. So.
Thank you. And then students were wondering, when will sandwiches be returning to the cafe?
That's a good question. If I had a crystal ball and I knew what the regulations were going to look like, I'd be able to answer that a little more easily. But that's really what this is all going to depend on, right? Is what we're able to do and what we're allowed to do. Social distancing is going to be the biggest piece for us, right? That line management is the hardest thing, is the biggest barrier for us for adding in additional options. I will mention right now too that we do currently have a dining survey live. If you go to our Instagram, it's linked there. It's also signage up in the cafeteria. So if you have suggestions or feedback, we'd love to hear that from you as well. So.
And then what happens to our declining balance that goes unused if it doesn't transfer to the next semester?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easy answer to that is it does transfer over from semester to semester. So that will carry over. Last year was, of course, different because of COVID, but it will be carrying forward. Any unused balance will carry forward.
What about for seniors? What happens to that money that doesn't get used?
Unfortunately, it does go away at that point.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Next up is Betsy Knott to answer some more Career Center questions. So Betsy, what kind of information or interaction do you want from graduating seniors who might be interested in, being the alumni who are involved in those events that you're doing after they've graduated?
So 2 parts here. From graduating seniors, we want to know what you're doing next. The enrollment office, how we talk about the college, how we sell it to other students in terms of the fantastic liberal arts education that you're getting here. The better data we have about what students are doing next, the easier it is to sell Marietta College to a variety of people. So what we want to know first is what you're doing, where you're doing it, when you're starting, graduate school, military, job, whatever it might be. We would love to get that information from you before you leave campus. And if you're still looking, it's important to note that students and alumni get to keep using the Career Center until the day that you decide to stop working. So if you want to be an active alum with our office, all you got to do is tell us. It's a great way, again, that if you tell us where you're going and you have an alternative email address from your marietta.edu, we can contact you that way. We can contact you through LinkedIn. You can contact us. I'm having regular conversations with the MCAA group in terms of what kinds of things alumni want to do with the Career Center. So if you have an idea, make sure you share it with us before you leave.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Next up will be President Rude to answer a couple of last questions.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
You're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you so much. I
All
appreciate that. So we had some student questions about the tent on the mall because a lot of people have really enjoyed it, myself included. I've seen people eat out there, have meetings there, just hang out and do homework there. So we were wondering, can the tent stay on the mall for fall semester and maybe even past COVID? And then if that's not an option, could we get more picnic tables and like shade around campus?
Do you want me to get you the shade too, Elizabeth? Yeah. Okay. No,
Umbrellas.
That's a great question. The answer to the question is we will probably take the tent down at the end of the semester, so we won't leave it up during the summertime, just because there aren't a lot of people on campus. But absolutely, we will consider leaving the tent up in the fall, putting the tent back up in the fall, in conjunction with the possibility of picnic tables, dining spaces. It incites us to go and go out and look at what might be those options over the summer. So absolutely, we will take both of those suggestions into consideration.
Thank you. And then I just also wanted to say that, it's been a crazy year and we've had to deal with a lot that we didn't think we would have to deal with. And I know myself and a lot of other students are very grateful that we could have an in-person year this year, while a lot of our friends from other schools are not so lucky. So just wanted to thank everyone for the hard work that they do to make sure that we can be here in person.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Take care.